nations and tribes. We made you different from each other. We made you different from each other. Nations and tribes. Now, just this part I want to read. Now, obviously, the second part of the ayat is a result of that. And it's showing the result of this creation and this process that Allah has in this creation. Where He says that, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. That the best amongst you are the ones who are, or who have the most taqwa. Who have the most, you can say piety. But truly here, it has a amazingly different meaning as to what it actually means and where it comes from. Now, so what is Allah saying at first? He's saying that, listen, your creation is such that you have been created different from one another. Even though you come from one man and one woman, and these two got together to make one of you, but each one of you that came out differently. There's no two who are alike. Everyone is unique. Everyone is different from the other. If you look at our creation, it is something that Allah prides Himself in. It's different than when you manufacture something. You know, when you manufacture something, for example, in a factory, what do? You take raw material and you put that raw material in you can say a hard die, where anything that you want to make, you make it into the shape of that. For example, you want to make a ball. So you make the die and you put the raw material there, and the result is that it's a ball. Right? It's a ball. It comes out. Or a bat. You make it into a shape of a bat, and then you put the raw material into that cast, and it comes out as a bat. Anything that you want to make, you plan it first, that this is what I want. You create the shape for it. You put the raw material in there, and then it comes out like that. Now tell me, when you put this raw material in a cast that is made for a bat or a car, when you are going to put it there, it comes out like a car. Now, if you put it again, is it going to come out differently? Or is it going to come out the same? It's going to come out the same. If you do it 50 times, will it be something else? All of a sudden you see that, oh, it's not a car anymore, it changed. If it changes, if it becomes something else, then it's known as a mistake, an error, a fault. Because being the same is what it's supposed to do. It cannot be anything else other than that. It's the same every time. So now, this is the extent of what human beings can do. They can only manufacture. They cannot create. The difference between manufacturing and creating is that in manufacturing, every time you put the raw material into the die, into the cast, the same result happens. In creation, every time you put the raw material into the cast, a different product comes out. A different product comes out. That's why Allah takes a man and Allah takes a woman, and every time a product is made, it is unique, unlike any other product before it. And Allah, when He looks at that creation, He says, listen, this is a creation that I am proud of. In other words, everyone being different than the other is a source of pride for Allah. Tabarakalladhi. That He is the one, that glory be to Him. He is celebrated who has made you different from one another. Completely unique, completely on your own. Everyone's, even their fingerprints are different than the other. Even He went to the fact that their DNA, even if you go that far, He has put it different for you, a different signature for you. Everything is different, even though you came from the same mother and father. You came from the same mother and father, but everyone is different from each other. This is creation. This is creation. Allah prides himself on that. Allah says that this is the glory of my creation, that I've made every one of you different from each other. Now, when he has made us different from each other, then obviously these differences that arose became nations, it became tribes. Now, some of us became Arabs, some of us became Ajam, some of us became Chinese, Indians, Europeans, white, black, Hispanic, non-Hispanic. We became all these different things. Now, all these different things that we have, what are these things meant for? He said that, listen, that I created all of you from a man and woman and made you into tribes and nations, لِتَعَارَفُوا, so that you may know each other. You may know each other. What do you mean, know each other? So you made us like this. Of course, on one hand, the meaning is very simple. That simple meaning is that, for example, if Allah had made even two people identical to each other, there would be a huge problem in identification. Even if two were together. Everyone is unique so that they all have their own individual identity. And all of these things have happened. Now he says that I made it so that you may know each other. It's very good. Otherwise, if you all look the same, what happens? The only way to differentiate that is something that we have to make up now. We have to make it up. A number, for example, we write on the forehead. Or your name has to be written on your forehead with your father's name and grandfather's name. It has to be written, tattooed on your forehead in order for us to recognize you. But no, Allah did you a favor. He made you look different than the other person. So that there doesn't need to be a name tattooed on your face to recognize you. Now you can be recognized just by seeing him and says, oh, this is him. And there's no one else like him. There might be someone who's very similar to him, probably identical also, but not completely identical. Something is different. Something is different, and that's how it happens. Allah made it like that. That's one meaning. But here is the real, actual, factual meaning that I want to make you understand before we get further to where we want to go. Let's understand this. Send a salawats. You know, my friends, our creation is such that the growth of our creation only happens when there's problems. If we don't have problems, we don't grow. Our growth occurs in problems. When there's no problems, we don't grow. You know, look at human history, you'll see that. Most of human growth came in turmoil and in wars. All the inventions happened in wars, in the time of wars and turmoil. The only thing that came out of peace is more parties and corruption. That's the only thing that came out of peace. When we went through difficulties, you look at human history and you'll see it. It's very clear that all the great steps that have been taken at the time when there's problems and difficulties that happen in our life and in our history. And this is a nature of this life that we have. Problems is what makes us grow. So if you want to grow as an individual, then wait for the times when you have problems. Wait for the times when you have problems, and you will see that you are going to grow. You will hate those problems. You will hate the difficulties that you have to face, but you are going to grow in those times. It's the natural way of growth. So now, in order for us to grow, there needed to be problems. And problems happen when there are differences. Problems occur when there is a difference. If everything is the same, there's no problem there. When does an item in math become a problem? When there's when there's difference, and you have to solve it now. It becomes a problem. A math problem is when there's a difference, and hence now you have to go forward and solve it. Problems have to happen, and problems happen when there's differences. So in order for us to grow, we need to have problems. Problems happen when there's differences. Allah created differences in our creation in order that the problems are natural. It's natural for us to have problems. You and me have a problem. I'm different than you. You're different than me. I think differently than you. You think different than me. Every one of us thinks differently than each other. And even if we don't think differently, someone, for example, has identical thinking, but you know what happens? The angle that they're looking at of a certain situation is different. It's like, for example, 4 blind men saw an elephant. I didn't mean saw an elephant, came across an elephant. They didn't see anything. One of them touched the nose, the trunk, the other one touched the tail, the other one touched the leg, and that. So now, all these 4, blind men, they experienced an elephant. And when they were asked, what is an elephant? All 4 gave a different reply. All 4 gave a different reply. They're like, what happened here? One said, elephant is nothing, he's so soft and squiggly because he was holding the tail. The other one who held the trunk, he said, no, he's big and strong. And all these other things. Everyone held a different part of the elephant, experienced a different part. We are also the same way when it comes to experiences in life. We look at things from different angles. We saw it differently. You saw the same accident. One saw it from this side of the street, the other saw it from that side of the street. And the stories are different. So this differences, what do you attribute these differences to? Are these differences because they are scheming or they are plotting? Or are these differences just natural? My friends, life and Allah, our creation by Allah is the same thing. He created these natural differences in us so there could be problems. So that we can have problems. We can have fitna. Fitna is not a bad thing. It's not evil. Fitna is not evil. You know what that means, right? Fitna? Fitna means, when there is differences of opinion, corruption. The word corruption is used. It can lead to corruption. Fitna can lead to corruption, but for people who are smart, fitna is the greatest ladder for their growth. The greatest ladder for their growth is when there is fitna. For a person who's strong. For a person who's weak, yes, he gets crumbled under fitna. Differences of opinion, that says, I don't want to deal with anything. I don't want to deal with politics. I don't want to be involved in this. That's it, they run away. Because they're weak. But people who are strong, they thrive in these situations. They look at these situations and say, yes, subhanallah, this is the time right now. I need to do this. And this is our growth here. The growth happens when there's differences. And if we run away from differences, if we run away from conflicts, what happens? Then we do not give ourselves the opportunity to grow. We don't give ourselves the opportunity to grow. What we end up doing is what? Isolating ourselves. And you know what? Isolation never leads to growth. If I want to go and become a monk and I hide myself in some room and say that I'm going to be a monk now and I'm going to get closer to Allah and I'm going to become a better person, it never works. That's why Islam never encouraged this practice. Are there monks in Islam? No, there isn't. In fact, it has been discouraged, condemned, criticized. in Islam to become monks. That's not the idea. You have to put yourself in the midst of the society and engage in society for your growth. This is how it's going to happen. My friends, if you understood this principle that I mentioned to you and how Allah is mentioning it in the Quran, He created these differences so that your growth can occur in these differences. That you can become a better person in these differences. When you look at these differences and you see your growth in them, then it's now, in order for you to grow, the best thing and the most influential thing for your growth is to get involved in society. So get involved in society. That is it. You know what will happen if there are no centers? Yes, of course, there wouldn't be any fitna anymore, but I understood that. But if there is no center and there's no fitna, it means there's no chance for our growth. There's no chance for our growth. You can't grow hiding in your house and praying there. You can't grow like that. You have to grow when you interact with others, when you work with others. And when you work with others, there's going to be differences of opinions. There's going to be conflicts. And in these conflicts, in these differences of opinion, and in that anger that you have, and in that emotional swelling that you have of dealing with others, or feeling disrespected by others, and being looked down upon by others, or being disagreed by others, or rejected by others, is where your growth is going to occur. My friends, centers in these places are the place where you actually start to grow. That's why when the Muslims started to grow, the first thing that the Prophet did was make an Islamic center. He made an Islamic center in Mecca. Now in Medina. Medina is, masjids and all that. That's there. The first thing he did is that he made an Islamic center. It was near where Mount Safa is right now. It used to be a house of someone. And Rasulullah made that and appointed that's going to be the place where we are going to come together. Now, obviously in those days, they couldn't afford to have their own place. Also, they couldn't have their own independent place of worship because the kuffar were there and they just didn't let them do that. So what happens is that Rasulullah made this center in someone's house. Someone's house who was in the middle of the city near Mount Safa. He says that his house is going to be the Islamic center. Now what happened? The first issue what happened is that, why his house? Why is he so special? You see, the first thing took place. And the first questions happened. Why that guy's house? Why not his house? Why not our tribe? We have a place also. Now, again, you see, what happened here? Difference of opinion, conflicts occurred. And this is where the growth takes place. Can you learn to work together with the differences that you have? Allah gave an example for that. He says, here's the thing. I made two people who are completely different than one another. Completely different than one another. From two different backgrounds, two different families, everything. They're so different than one another. I brought them together and I made them fall in love with each other and sacrifice for each other. Look at this, how it works. When two different people can come who are completely different than one another, and if they can come together and work together, it's called a successful marriage. It's called a marriage. He says, this is how it works. And you know what? And when you deal with it, this is where your growth is. Your growth is going to happen there. My friends, the people who grow the most before Allah are the ones who are working in centers, who get involved in it and put their name there. And when you put your name there, then you come under heat. You know? We were supposed to have a program last week. The speaker didn't come. Who's responsible for getting the speaker? Oh, this person is. His name is there. Everyone looks towards him. What happened? Why didn't you get him? Yes, you're under pressure. And living in America, you don't like that. You know, I don't like being under pressure. So what's the best way out of it? Listen, I will work for the masjid, but don't put my name there. But if I do that, if you do that, you will lose the chance to grow. Your growth will come when your name will be there and others start condemning you and criticizing you. That's when growth happens. This is where we need to look at ourselves and see. And that's why whenever a masjid, a center opens up, it is an opportunity for mu'mineen to grow in that area. The iman will start to grow. And if you do not grow, it's very difficult for people who do not grow to stand with Imam Zaman. You can't stand with him. It's very difficult to stand with Imam Zaman. I told you that Imam Reza took a decision, created a movement, went ahead, but no one understood him. None of the Shias understood what he was doing. That's why they condemned him, criticized him. They plotted to kill him. The only person who understood was the sister of Imam Reza, Fatima Masuma. She understood Imam Reza. She was aware what he was going through. She was aware what we as Shias need to do. She banded together 400 people from her family, 17 brothers of hers, and relatives and friends, and all these people she gathered together in Medina and moved them to help Imam Reza, who was in Khurasan. And she was going towards there when Mamun heard about this. And he sent out word to intercept this army and to deal with it. And her band of people were intercepted in a place called Saveh, which is about an hour away from the city of Qom. And that's where they're intercepted and they were raided. Their tents were raided. All of the brothers of Imam Reza and Hazrat Masuma were killed. All of them were killed. Hazrat Masuma was injured. The governor of Qom, he was a mu'min. He heard about what happened and he went there himself trying to look for Bibi Masuma. And he found her there and he brought her to Qom. And she stayed in Qom, in a house that he made for her, that he gave her. She stayed in that little room. People go there for ziyarat. She stayed in that little room for 17 days, praying and crying for Imam Reza. Crying for Imam Reza. She was crying because she could not help him. She was helpless. And she was crying to Allah. 17 days she lived there until she died. When the news of her death reached Imam Reza, truly Imam Reza knew that this is the only person who understood me and who knew what I was doing. No one was able to understand. The reason is because no one was smart enough to know that. They had gone through that growth that's necessary. The only way you can grow is how? By being involved. When you get involved, that's when you start growing. That's when you start becoming keen and smart and capable. And that's what our Imam needs. Hazrat Masuma, truly, if when you look at her, she died there, Imam Reza cried for her. And he cried very much for her because he knew that she was the only supporter that he had, and now there's no one there for her. My friends, difference of creation leads to a lot of consequences. People really do not know what the Imams have gone through. What has Imam Reza gone through in his life? How many of you know the life of Imam Reza? Let me just tell you one small incident in his life. Small incident in his life that I want to tell you about from Imam Reza. And imagine what he had to go through. You know, when Imam Reza had a son, and you know that he only had one son, one child, that was Imam Jawad. The only child that Imam Reza has was Imam Jawad. And when he had the child, the child looked different than Imam Reza. In his features, looked different than Imam Reza. And apparently, he was of a much darker complexion. The people, the Shias who saw the birth, questioned Imam Jawad being the son of Imam Reza. They said that this is not your son. Imam Reza, his first son, and he's being told that this is not your son. I mean, what could it be? What are you accusing him of? Imagine this, what Imam Reza is going through. And he's like, how can I explain this? How can I even go to explain such a thing to people who are accusing me of this? Who's accusing my wife of this? What can he do? He says, do what you want to make sure that it's my son. He didn't back off. He says, do what you want to be my son. So in those days, they used to have face recognizers, people who were experts in recognizing the faces and features of people, and they would match the faces, and they will know that if this is someone's son. It's like a DNA test. Like a DNA test, a very crude DNA test. You had these people. So the Shias called them. It's not the enemies. The people who are the followers of Imam Reza are accusing Imam Reza of having an illegitimate son in his house. And Imam Reza tells, okay, go on. See this. They call this person. He comes there. He sees the son. And he sees Imam Reza. And he comes out. And there's a big group of people already now accumulated outside his house. And he announces to them that in my expert opinion, that this is actually the son of Imam Reza. And you know what? Some of those people walked away and say, maybe he gave him something to say that. This is the Imams who are going through this. This is the Imams who are going through this. Really. Can you imagine this? When you look at them, then you begin to appreciate, that the love that they had for Allah's creation. The love that they had for Allah, you begin to appreciate them. That in times like this, we would have broken down. We would not be able to tolerate this. We would hate those people and run away. And we would be like, I don't even want to see these people again. And here's Imam Reza, again, accepting that this is Imam Reza, my friends. And he, at the end of his life, when he was dying, when Hazrat Masuma was shaheed, he knew that he lost his only supporter. When they gave him the poison, and they administered the poison to Imam Reza, when they administered the poison to Imam Reza, he started to now obviously feel the suffering of that pain. The veins started to pop. His breathing became difficult as the lungs began to get filled with fluid. He was not able to even turn. And Abba Salt, his servant, he kept Imam Reza in a bed, went away. Then a point came in that time when Imam Reza he came off the bed and started rolling in the sand next to it. There's no floor, it's just sand, dirt. He started to roll in the dirt. Abbas thought the worst. He came there and says, what happened? How can I help you? Imam Reza started rolling on the dirt. He thought that Imam Reza must be in pain and he cannot deal with himself. So he came and held Imam Reza and said, Mawla, are you okay? Master, are you okay? Let me help you here. Let me help you here. And as he was rolling on the ground, in that moment of pain and whatever he was going through, he called out to Abbas Salt and said, Abbas Salt, do you know that my father Hussein was rolling like this on the dirt? You know that my father was in pain like this? I'm trying to think of that pain that he was going through. When Imam Hussein was on the ground, he was rolling in the ground. But you know what? It wasn't by choice that Imam Hussein was rolling. You know why he was being rolled on the ground? It wasn't his choice. It were the spears that were being poked into his body. Those spears were being poked into his body and they would drag that spear. And as they would pull that spear, his body would be dragged from one side to the other. And then from one side to the other, Imam Hussein would be dragged like this in the ground. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون يا محمود بحق محمد يا علا بحق علي يا فاطر السماوات بحق فاطمة يا محسن بحق حسن يا قديم الحسن بحق Hussein. Allah, give us the tawfiq to be on the right path, the wisdom to understand your guidance, hasten the reappearance of our Imam, make us his helper when he comes. وآخر الدعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. ماتم Hussein. Ya 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 Hussein.